scientists, welcome back. My name is Jessica Power, one of the science curriculum coordinators for Kansas City Public Schools. Scientists, we have done so much learning in the last few weeks. And a few weeks ago, we talked about making observations. We talked about making observations to collect information about what we're looking at and what we're learning about. Well, today, scientists, we are going to learn about physical properties. Physical properties are simply characteristics of the things we observe. Now, back here, I have some examples for us of what physical properties are. Physical properties are ways that we can describe the shape of an object, the color of an object, the size of an object, the texture, what it feels like, and weight. So let's go through what those different physical properties look like. So a physical property, like we said, is a characteristic of an object that we observe. So anytime we touch something or see something or taste something or smell something or hear something, we're observing. And we can learn about the different properties by using our 5 senses. Now, the shape of an object could be round, it could be flat, it could be square, it could be rectangular, it could be heart-shaped, it could be star-shaped. You get the idea, the shape of the object. Next is the color. What color is the object? Is it red, blue, orange, gray, brown, black, white? Is it more than one color? What color is the object? We can talk about the size. Is it big? Is it small? Is it tiny? Is it gigantic? We can talk about the texture. So what does it feel like? Is it rough? Is it soft? Is it hard? Those are textures. And we can describe the weight. Is it really heavy? Is it really light? Is it 5 pounds? Is it 2 pounds? Right? So we can describe how heavy or light it is. So scientists, what we're going to do today is I have some random objects, and we are going to go through describing the physical properties of those objects. Think you can handle it? Okay, let's start with something easy. We'll start with this. Scientists, this is a pen. Now, are there any physical properties that we can describe of this pen? What do you think? If you said the pen is orange, by describing the color of it, you're correct. Maybe you said it's small, describing the size. Maybe you described a physical property as round, because it's round. That would be shape. Or maybe you just said that it was long. That could also be a physical property. Got the hang of it? Let's try another one. This one's pretty easy too. What do you think? What would be a physical property of this super... Ooh, that would give you a physical property. What's a physical property that you see? It's blue. That would be describing the color of it. Maybe you said it has white lettering. I almost said it's a tiny hat, right? Describing the size of it. It's little. This is actually one of those hats that they serve ice cream in at the Royals games. What else could we describe? Could we describe the shape of it? What about the shape that you see here? It's round, right? Also, what do you think? Is it hard or soft? It's hard. So those are all physical properties of this little tiny hat. Okay, what else do we have here? Haha, a pine cone. What can you tell me about the physical properties of this pine cone? color is this pine cone? Yeah, this pine cone is brown. It's actually a decorative pine cone, so there's a little bit of like gold painted onto it, but it works. Does this pine cone have a shape? How would you describe its shape? You could describe it as round, right? It's round. You could describe it as an oval. What about its texture? What do you think this pine cone feels like? You can probably hear me scraping my fingers against it. What do you think the texture is like? Do you think it's smooth or kind of rough? Yeah, it's kind of rough. It's got these little parts to the pine cone. Anything else that you could describe? What do you think? Is this big or is this small? What size is this? It's kind of small. There could be bigger pine cones. There probably could be smaller. Good. All right, scientists. What do we have next? How about this? This is what's called a geode. So it's actually taken, this is the inside of a geode. The inside of a geode has different minerals in it. They're different colors. Then the outside of the geode is a rock. Looks just like a rock, like you would find outside. And when you break it and crack it open, then you find inside these little crystals. Physical properties. First of all, this is heavy. It's a rock. It's super heavy. That's a physical property describing its weight. What color is this? Can you tell? It's purple. Very good. What about its texture? Now it's kind of hard to see. Do you see its texture? It kind of glisten in the light. What do you think? Do you think it's smooth or do you think it's rough? Yeah, it's rough. Can you hear me scratch my nails against it? Good. Let's go to something completely different. How about this little guy? This little guy is a stuffed sloth. What do you notice? I notice, first of all, that it's multiple colors. What colors describe the physical properties of this sloth? What do you see? Has some white fur on it. There's some brown fur. It's got brown on its nose, black on its eyes. Yeah, that describes the color. Scientists, can you tell the texture of this sloth? What does this sloth feel like? Can you tell? Do you think, is it going to be rough like our geode? Or do you think it's soft? Can you tell? It's super soft. Yeah, very soft. Okay, let's see. I think we can do a challenge. You ready for a challenge? Okay, let's do a challenge. I have a softball and a baseball. Okay, give you a second to look at the softball and the baseball. Scientists, sometimes objects have similar physical properties, meaning there's things about one object that are the same or similar as another. Scientists, do you see any physical properties, remember, characteristics of an object that are similar between these two? Do you see anything that's the same? The shape of them, they're both round. If you look really, really closely, they both have red stitches holding the leather together. They're both pretty hard. You can hear them when they hit my hand. I'll tell you, the baseball's a little heavier, but for the most part, they're similar because they're round. They have red seams, and those are similar physical properties. Now, these two objects, scientists, also have different physical properties. Can you identify a physical property that's different about these two objects? The softball's yellow, it's bright yellow, and the baseball is white. That means that their color is a different physical property. but the color of the seams or the stitches is both red. They're the same. Scientists, objects can be similar and they can be different. We just saw that a softball and a baseball, they have similar properties. There are physical properties about both of those objects that are the same. Then there's physical properties that are very different, as we looked at the color. Are you ready for one more tricky one to compare the similarities and differences between two objects? Okay, scientists, well, I'm going to give you a clue. These objects are the same kind of thing. You typically find them in the fall. They're taken from a plant. Have you figured out what they are yet? Sometimes people like to carve them on Halloween. They're pumpkins. Did you guess a pumpkin? I gave you some characteristics or things that they're used for to see if you could figure out what the objects were. So scientists, I have 2 pumpkins here. Yeah, they're little pumpkins, but they work. Now, do you see any physical properties, characteristics of these pumpkins that are similar? I'll go ahead and rotate them for you so you can see the bottom of them, the side of them, the top of them. Do you see any physical properties that are the same? Maybe you notice that they both have long stems. Try to hold both of them at once. They both have long stems. They're both kind of a greenish, brownish stem color. What else did you notice that was the similar or the same for physical properties between the two? They're both round, so if we look at them from the bottom, you'll see they're both circular. You might have said they're about the same size, because one's not necessarily any bigger than the other. Remember, our softball and our baseball were very different sizes, but our pumpkins, about the same size. Any other physical properties that they do have that are the same? Look closely. Did you notice that this pumpkin does have orange on it? And this pumpkin is orange. So they share the similar property that they both have orange. One is fully orange, and the other one just has tiny little specks. So then what would be different physical properties? They're both pumpkins, but they have different physical properties. What would be different about the two? What do you think? Let's start with an easy question. Do you think the shape, color, or size is different between these two pumpkins? Shape, color, or size? Yeah, that's right. The color is different between them. You'll notice that this pumpkin, what color is this pumpkin? It's got some white, maybe a little bit of yellow, some green on it, some orange. Awesome. And then this guy, he's just orange. So scientists, we can have the same type of object, right? These are both pumpkins. They're both the same size. They're both round. And they can share lots and lots of physical properties, but still have differences. Scientists, as we grow this year in being scientists, as we find out and learn different things about science, whether that's about characteristics of living organisms, like we've talked about with traits that are similar from parents and offspring, whether it's about energy, whether it's about properties of matter, like we talked about today, whether it's pushes and pulls from last week, we can describe the properties or characteristics within all of these things we learn about. That's what being a great scientist is all about. It's about making observations and describing what you observe. And once we describe what we observe, once we make these observations, then we start to learn about different things around us and different characteristics. Scientists, I will be back next week, And next week, we're going to take this idea of physical properties and take it a step further. We're going to talk about sorting or categorizing objects with similar characteristics or similar physical properties. I will see you next week. Have a great day. Hey scientists, welcome back. I'm Jessica Power, one of the science curriculum coordinators at Kansas City Public Schools. Scientists, last week we talked about acquired and inherited traits, and we learned that all living organisms get some traits or characteristics from their parents, and some of the traits that living organisms have, they get from the environment around them through learning and interacting with the environment. Today we're going to take that idea of characteristics one step further. And we're going to talk about parts of or structures of different plants and animals. Now, there are thousands of species or kinds of plants, and there are thousands of species or kinds of animals. But there's some things that all plants and animals have in common, and those are what we're going to focus on today. So scientists, we're going to learn about structures of plants and animals and the functions of those structures. So let's dive in. What is a structure and what is a function? Well, scientists, a structure is a part of something or how something is organized. So take Fred, for example. Come here, Fred. Fred is a skeleton, right? So Fred gives the body or the human body its structure. It's how a body is organized. You can see that while Fred just has a skull, I have a similar shape of head. Right? There's a nose, there's a chin. His chin can also move. There's the top of his head, right? So Fred's skeleton provides structure for our bodies, just like our skeletons. Now, structures can also be parts of something. For example, my nose is a structure. My heart beating inside my chest, that's a structure. And all structures have a function. A function is the purpose of the structure or what the structure does. So if we go back to Fred, while he provides the whole body with structure, the function of the skeletal system is to provide support. It's to keep us from turning into a big pile of jello or pudding, right? It gives us structure. It gives us the shape of our body. Now, another function of the skeletal system is also to create blood cells. Who knew? That's right, scientists. Inside of what we call these long bones is an area called bone marrow. Maybe you've heard of it. And in that section, we have red and white blood cells that are created, providing our bloodstream and our body with the blood that they need. So let's go back. All living things have structure and they have function. And all living things, I don't care if you're a plant or an animal, or a spider. Technically, that's an arachnid. Anyways, I don't care what you are, but if you're a living thing, you have some things that you need. And those things are air, water, and food. Now, you may have heard the term oxygen or carbon dioxide. Both of those are elements on the periodic table. Now, the reason we say air for all living things is that there are some living organisms that need oxygen from the air, like you and me. We need oxygen to help our bodies. Now, plants, on the other hand, plants need carbon dioxide. And plants take in that carbon dioxide, and plants actually release or give off into the atmosphere oxygen. Maybe you made the connection. That's right. Now we, as animals, breathe in that oxygen. And as animals, we breathe out carbon dioxide that the plant breathes in. It's a cycle, if you pick that up. Now, something that's specific to animals is that all animals need a type of shelter. Now, plants are anchored into the ground, right? They don't go anywhere, they're stationary. But animals move around their environment. And one way that animals are able to survive is through shelter. You and I live in a structure, right? Whether that's an apartment or a home or a townhome or a condo or a duplex, whatever that looks like, that's our shelter. Some animals, like beavers, make dams, and that's their structure. Some animals, like birds, create bird nests. If you've seen the movie Finding Nemo, some fish, like clownfish, live in anemones, right? So different organisms, different animals, depend on their environment and the plants around them to provide shelter. And that shelter provides safety and provides a place for organisms to hide from predators. There's a reason why squirrels and rabbits, if you've ever noticed, can shrink into really, really tiny places. I don't know about you, but sometimes rabbits get in my backyard and my dog sees them and goes crazy. And Bella, my dog, tries to go get it, right? We let her outside and she goes crazy and she goes chasing the rabbit. Well, the rabbit's able to squeeze through the fence. Bella's 80 pounds. Bella can't squeeze through the fence. But that rabbit, more than likely, as it's running away, is going to go look for shelter or somewhere that it's safe to meet its need of survival. So scientists, let's dive in, okay? We've talked about structure, we've talked about function, what a part and what that part does. Now let's actually talk about what are some structures and functions that plants and animals have that allow them to meet their needs to get air, water, and food, and shelter to survive. So behind me, scientists, you will notice I've drawn this just beautiful flower. It's okay to laugh. I'm not an artist yet. And you'll see that the plant has different parts to it. You'll notice that the plant has petals, it has leaves, there's a stem, and then there's roots that are under the ground. Now, each one of those parts has a really, really important function to help that plant survive. So let's start from the top and work our way down. Now, scientists, petals or flowers typically are really bright colors. Have you ever noticed that? That flowers tend to have really bright colors. Now, the purpose or the function of those petals is to attract or get bugs like bees to come pollinate. And when an insect pollinates a plant, that means that they take the seed from one place to another, allowing other plants to grow and reproduce. So the petal helps to attract those animals or those insects to help pollinate the plant. Now moving down, all plants have some sort of stem. A tree has a trunk and branches. Our flower here has a stem. A cactus, that large center part of the cactus, that's its stem, okay? And the stem has a really important job. Its job is to move water that's absorbed from the roots, we'll get there, to go up to the leaves to hydrate the plant. If you've ever seen plants on a really hot summer day and they start to wilt or they start to kind of like turn down, that means that there's not enough water for the plant. And we know that living things need water. So, water, when it's provided to the plant, goes up through the roots and the stem transports or moves that water to the leaves and up towards the top of the plant. Now let's pop over to these leaves. All plants' leaves have a really important job. Leaves' jobs are to absorb or bring in that carbon dioxide from the air that plants need. Now the second thing that leaves bring in is sunlight. Plants need sunlight to survive. It's a form of energy for them. Now what's interesting about plants that's different from animals is that plants make their own food. They make it. It's a process called photosynthesis. We'll talk about that later. But when the water comes up through the roots, mixed with the light and the air, or the carbon dioxide, that allows plants to create their own food or energy to survive. And we know living things need food. And finally, the roots. The roots have a really important job. Well, two actually. The first thing that a plant's roots do is it soaks up water. You don't water a plant's leaves. That's not going to help anything. You water the base of the plant or the roots of the plant. And the roots suck up that water think of like a straw, and then it provides the rest of the plant with the water it needs. Now, the second thing that plants do is they anchor the plant to the ground for safety. Think about trees. If you've ever seen tree roots that grow out really far, maybe they've popped up through the surface of the grass. Those tree roots help to anchor that tree and keep it sturdy, give it structure to the ground. So these are parts or structures that plants have, and their functions allow the plant to survive. Now, scientists, there are some really cool plants out there, like the Venus flytrap, or water plants like algae or water lilies. And their structures are a little bit different, but the function is the same. The function is in some way to allow the plant to get air, water, and food in order to survive. Now let's talk about animals. Scientists, animals have thousands of parts. But there's some commonalities between all animals. So I brought those commonalities up, and hopefully you've heard of them. Animals have something called a heart. Now you may be able to, if you take your fingers and press up just below your chin right here, or your jaw, you might be able to feel your heartbeat. Can you feel it? Well, scientists, the heart has a really important job. And its job is to pump blood throughout the body. And blood has nutrients, water, and different vitamins and minerals that keep our bodies healthy. Now, another structures that our bodies have are lungs. Now, we use our lungs to help us breathe, just like many, many animals. And our lungs serve a really important job. Our lungs breathe in oxygen and breathe out carbon dioxide. Remember, all living things need air. They breathe in oxygen from the air, and we get rid of carbon dioxide that those plants take. And then scientists, our brain is another really, really important structure. In fact, our brain controls all the other structures in our body. Our brain is the control center of our body. It tells our body what to do. It tells the different structures how to function. It makes sure that we have hydration, right? We have enough water. It tells us when we're hungry. It keeps our temperature when we're not sick at a normal temperature. It regulates, right? It makes sure that our body is doing what it's supposed to be doing. So scientists, these three structures, the heart, lungs, and brain, are key structures that all living things need to survive. Okay? Now, when we get back next week, we're actually going to focus in on the brain. We're going to talk about the 5 senses, and we're going to talk about stimulus response. So have you ever put your hand on a hot stove or been walking across the street and seen a car coming? We're going to talk about how the brain processes those experiences. But for today's scientists, let's recap. We learned about structures and functions and how all living organisms have structures, and their function helps to keep that alive. We learned that all living things need air, water, and food. And we learned that animals also need shelter to keep them safe and protect them. And finally, scientists, we went through the parts of a plant. We talked about each individual structure and the function of that structure. And finally, we talked about 3 important structures that animals have and what those functions of those structures are. Now remember, scientists, these aren't the only structures that animals have. We have so many structures, but these are some of the most important. So scientists, I'll see you back here next week. Again, we're going to learn about the 5 senses. We're going to talk about stimulus response, which all connects back to this important structure called the brain. I'll see you next week.
Hello, I'm Erica Mabian, iSpark STEM Coordinator for Kansas City Public Schools. This is KCPS Homeroom. Today we're going to learn about how to do computer programming. This particular program is geared towards maybe pre-K to 2nd grade. You could create a story, write it down, or draw it out before you begin this program. That way you have kind of a storyline to go through when you start your program. Your program on Scratch Junior is going to be a block program. You also are going to need to access this from your iPad or iOS or Android device. It is an app-based program. So that will be something that you will need up front to use Scratch Junior. So let's get started with our tutorial on Scratch Junior. Why do we want to do computer programming for our littles? It allows them to have an opportunity to take their words and put them into action. How we start their action with their program is with these triggering blocks. They are all yellow in the program. How I like to start the program for the beginning of our storyline is when we click the green flag. You'll see a little bit more about these when we get to the design page. When we click the green flag, that's going to initiate the sequence of the program and tell the program to start. The start on bump is like when a program is going to do a tag. Maybe you're going to have your characters play soccer and you want your character to run up to the ball, and then when they touch the ball you want the ball to roll. That would be an appropriate use of using the bump one. You also have an option to send a message. You have an option to start on tap, which means you can actually touch your character and get it to stop and start, and you also can send your character a message. Those are going to be the ways we start our program with your triggering blocks. Next are your motion blocks. All of your motion blocks are going to be blue. They allow your characters to have movement. You have numbers under each one, and if you tap into the number, a keypad will open and you can change that number to whatever quantity you would like. And as you can see, our blocks are kind of like puzzle pieces, so they're going to connect one to the other. Our forward block going to the right, our moving up block, our turning right, our hopping, it will hop directly up and down. We have a move left, a move down, turn left, and finally, our last block is going to tell our program to go back home. So if you've given it a sequence of directions to go to, this one will make sure that your character goes right back into position as it initially started. Next, we have the purple blocks. These are our looks blocks. They have a lot of different functions, so let's go over what you could do. The first one, it says hi. You could actually click where it says hi and retype in your own message that you would like for it to say. Sometimes students use this as an opportunity to have their characters have conversations with each other. Next one is shrink. It will shrink to the size that you are wanting it to be, or you can change that number. Right now it's set to 2, but if you touch that block, you can set it to whatever number you would like. The next one is the hide. It's kind of dimmed out. It has an outline of your character. You can actually have your characters hide and be invisible. Our next block will be the grow block. So you may want to use those simultaneously with the shrink. If you have your character shrink and then you want to have them grow and reappear, reset will have your character go back to its original size, and your show block will go alongside your hide block if you have it disappear and you want it to reappear. These are your looks blocks. Your sound blocks are the ones that our littles love the most. They're allowed to have it make sound. Depending on the character that they choose, some of the characters have programmed sounds that go with it. So you could choose whatever program you want, have your character have a sound block, and then decide on what that sound is that correlates with that character, and then you can see if you really like it. One that I never have to teach my kindergartners is play a recorded sound. They absolutely figure out that it has a microphone and that they can record. I never have to even show them. When they initiate this play recorded sound block, it will allow them to record their own voice, and then they have their character being able to speak and initiate the thoughts that they have in their mind. Our control blocks are orange. These give your program a little bit of time where you could have it do things that you may want it to do on a time schedule. We have our weight, which you can change the variable and have it be smaller or larger because you can touch that 10 and change it to something else. Set the speed. Maybe you want that soccer ball that's in your program to go really fast or slow. You can change the speed. You could have that ball stop when it hits the goalpost, or the one that the kids really love is this repeater block. This allows your program to go in a loop. You just have to put your blocks inside that puzzle piece, and then your program will be on the loop for as long as you put it. Right now it's set for 4, but if you touch the floor, you're able to change it and have it be what you would like. So let's take a look at your storyline and how you imagine your story to go and what you want your story and your characters to do. Last, we have our end blocks. These end our program. And we have end, go to page. This will have you go to a second page if you have change of scenery or if you have several pages like you're creating a book. And the last one is repeat forever. So if you have something that you want to have on a continuous loop, you're going to use the repeat forever block. What does our program look like on the stage? This is your programming area. This section allows you to gain your characters. If you click the plus, you'll have access to lots of characters. You can save your program. You can have a grid. Say you want to do some math. You want to have your character sit at 4 and 3. You could use a graph in order to initiate that. You can change your background, add a text, click the green flag. It's going to initiate your program. And here are the stage or the backdrops that you will be able to choose from if you've chosen several pages. Along this section are your block categories where you get to choose all of those blocks, and you're going to drag your blocks down to the programming area. What does that look like? For the backgrounds, here are lots of choices. If you want one, simply tap that section that you want and then click the check mark, and that will select your background. Next are your characters. If you want a character, you simply touch your character. It will outline in orange, and then you'll click the check mark. Now this is what your programming stage is going to look like. There are lots of different options. As you can see, I've pulled down some blocks to have it in our program. I've added characters. I have a cat, a barn, and a chicken in my stage here. And I've also changed my background to be a farm stage. So I'm all ready to have my program be initiated and see what things can happen. When I told it to click the green flag, he's going to go 1 space to the right, hop up 4 times, and turn, hop 2 1 time. Then this one is when I touch him, he's going to turn to the right, turn to the left, and that one is on a loop, and they're going to do that 4 times. These are all the definitions and categories that we have listed for the numbers there, and you can play around with that and see how you can add things to your program and have it mirror the story that you have outlined. So if you've created a story, maybe you've written it down on a page with your parents, now you're ready to make your program come alive. Let's program your story. My story is, there once was a cat who lived on a farm. The cat walked over to the chicken. This scared him, and the chicken turned and turned. So how did I make that into a computer program? Let's check it out. First, I added a cat, a barn, and a chicken as my characters. I'm programming my cat now because my cat is in the stage section. Now I've added a control block, the event block. Click the green flag, turn, 1 space, hop 4 times, hop 2 times. And that meant that when I click the green flag, that's going to initiate my cat to start going. But when he bumps into the chicken, he's going to turn 4 times. And that will match what I've created in my story. Your options are endless, and having your program do what you would like for it to do. You can add new pages to your story. You can add new characters to your story. You can make all the changes that you'd like. There are no right or wrong answers. It's all just fun. This completes our programming with Scratch Junior. Remember to have your iPad ready for that app, and you're able to start with your Scratch Junior and create your own storyline. Please join us at Twitter with all of your pictures of the things that you're learning from doing Scratch Junior. Tag us at KC Public Schools and use the hashtag KCPS.Homeroom. Have fun coding!
My name is Ariel Starkheim. I am the theater and speech teacher here at Lincoln College Prep. And the teacher who had the biggest influence on me actually is a pretty long list of teachers. However, the very first one that comes to mind is my high school theater teacher. His name was Doug Goheen. And he was one of the most delightfully eccentric individuals you could meet and still not be caught off guard by any of his actions or anything like that. And I loved this person and his teaching style so much because, as so many of us in high school, I was a little bit aimless in the beginning for quite a while. I tried sports and I wasn't good at that. I tried band and I wasn't too into that. I tried color guard and it really wasn't my calling. So I was doing that thing that just about every kid does, where it's like, where is my place in high school? And I was really kind of struggling with it. And it wasn't until my junior year when I took an introduction to theater class, and Mr. Goheen basically, as gently as possible, shoved me off of a cliff of this exciting world where things finally made sense. Instead of seeing the world in black and white, it opened up and colors were all over the place. And it was because I understood the language of theater and performing arts. And my senior year, I did the musical and I did the spring play, which was Picnic. And there was one instance in particular where I always put pins in my hair just because it's easy access. You don't lose a pin if it's in your hair. And in rehearsal one day, he happened to sit behind me, and I had, I don't know how many pins in my hair, but he took them all out and rearranged them and then put them back in my hair, and then he walked away. And the reason why I still remember that as an adult now is because it was the most subtle little thing that anybody could do. Just came and played with my hair for a second, but to me, as an awkward teenager who was not seen and was not popular, it was just a really nice way of him to say, I see you and I get you. And it was such a nice moment. And so for me as a teacher now, I really put in an effort, not only because I want to, but I feel like it's so important for our students to feel like they are seen. And I will continue to make it my job and my mission to make sure that every kid that enters my classroom, I have a conversation with them, because there's nothing more terrifying than the idea of not being remembered. And so I make a point to remember my kids, and I ask them questions and I get to know them. And then that's the best way for us to know how we can help them move forward, is to know them. And so I thank Mr. Goheen for igniting the spark of my passion for theater and for just teaching me how to see people.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Dr. Jones. I'm the science coordinator for Kansas City Public Schools. And today I'm talking specifically to my middle school students. And we're going to be talking about the structure of chemical reactions. Now, understand, when we talk about chemical reactions in middle school, what we're really talking about is what happens before and after an event, or before and after a reaction takes place. Now, before we get into this whole discussion, well, what really is a chemical reaction? Think of it this way. A chemical reaction is when you start out with a certain something we call a reactant, and then due to change, it's rearranged, reorganized to become something different, which would be a product. So in this case, if you notice, the gas went from being that yellowish color to this red color, and that red color lets you know that you have a new product that you didn't have before. Now, when you're looking at matter, you can describe it in two different ways. You can either talk about its physical characteristics or its chemical characteristics. So let's begin with physical characteristics. What are they? So volume, mass, melting point, boiling point, these are the types of things that you can physically see. But more important, size, shape, weight, density. These are things that, again, you can describe something. I always tell people, when you think about physical properties, think about the way that you meet someone. And you can notice like what they're wearing or the way that their hair is styled or something of that nature. Chemical properties are what's inside, okay? Again, similar to people. So for example, reactivity with other chemicals. I have 2 children. My son, he's older, he's in high school. If you put him in a group of strangers, he will immediately start to introduce himself. He's very, very open. He's very easy to approach. My daughter's in middle school. She is completely the opposite. If you put her in a group of people that she doesn't know, she will literally just cocoon herself. So you see that just like with chemicals, people, depending on what's inside, can either react with a new group or be very, very distant and restrained from a new group. Toxicity. Now, I know that you've seen this image sometimes following trucks, and really this image tells you about the chemical properties inside a vehicle. Well, when you talking about toxicity, you're talking about doing harm. And I do know that you probably have a few friends that you already know. They are kind of toxic. They're the ones that talk about people. They're the ones that post, things that you really wouldn't want to say in a group of folks. In addition to that, flammability. There are certain compounds and chemicals that will immediately ignite. And again, I know you have some friends that it doesn't take a lot to just set them off. And then lastly, the oxidation state. These are things that will rust. And so what you find is that if we compare it to people, you have some people that cannot take the pressures of life, or if something is not perfect, they can't, weather the storm. So, in a lot of ways, these are internal characteristics or internal properties of matter, where again, these are external on the outside, physical. Now, let's talk about the difference between physical and chemical change. So, for example, this is Destiny's Child from 1990. Now, if you recall, in 2000, there was a switch. And if you notice, here's Destiny's Child from 2000. Now, these 2 folks stayed the same, but where did they go? All right? Here's another example. Little Yachty. Little Yachty and his Ferrari. Nice car. That was pre-crash. Here's the car post-crash. So you can tell there is a change here. And my favorite, this is Justin Bieber. Justin Bieber before Selena Gomez. Well, here's Justin Bieber after Haley Baldwin. And if you notice, this little guy, yeah, you could easily come into my house. Hey, you could date my daughter. This dude wouldn't let him walk my dog. I'm just saying, rough life. But the whole point is this. Some changes you can reverse, some you can't. So let's talk about characteristics between physical changes and our chemical changes. So let's start with the first one, up top. Physical changes that occur will not change the composition of matter, whereas a chemical change will. So again, let's look at Justin. Justin Bieber before, Justin Bieber after, it's the same guy. We haven't really changed who he is internally, but there's some external differences. However, if you look at the composition of Destiny's Child, they did change. So in this case, this would be like a chemical reaction because we physically changed the composition. We took 2 people out, added 1 new person, okay? Another one deals with reversibility. Physical changes can be reversed. Chemical changes are irreversible. They can't be reversed. Now, as much as Justin may want to go back to this kid, not going to happen. However, let's say these two decide, you know what? I'm not doing anything post-COVID. Hey, let's get a Destiny Child 1990 reunion concert going. Well, she's still around. And she's still around too. Notice, you could actually go back to the 1990 version of Destiny's Child. Now, new products being formed. Now, this is very important, and here's why. Although this car cannot be driven, technically, everything that was on the car before the accident could be found somewhere on the street after the accident. It didn't really make anything new. Now, yeah, I know the airbag went off, but let's not, split hairs here, okay? Now, let's talk about how it reacts to environmental changes or changes in heating and cooling. These are ice cubes in the sun. No problem, they melt, keep your drink cold. This is ice cube in the sun. Here's the difference. If you notice, that's that same look that your dad would give you anytime he said cut the grass, and you were like, okay, and then you went out and played with your friends, and then you came back, and that dude opened up the door. Yeah, you don't want that. This is a snowball. I come from New Orleans, Louisiana, and this is a frozen drink. All we do is take some ice, put a little juice on top, great dessert. Cool you off, wonderful. This is also a snowball, but this is the snowball from Animal Farm. And I will tell you, if you put that in a cold place, he would probably start shivering and things of that nature. So if you notice, when we're talking about chemical and physical changes, yes, a physical change will change the state, but you don't have all these other reactions going on, especially absorbing and releasing energy. Now, next, when we talk about bonds being formed, well, here's one thing I want to show you. When you heat water, right? And again, we're talking about just putting it on the stove. You can boil this water all day and night. You're not going to make any new bonds. Steam, liquid water, and ice, still water. However, if you take an egg and put it in that water, all right, what will happen is you'll start changing the composition of the actual proteins. You'll rearrange them. You do the same thing when you put lye or you put a permanent in your hair. So anytime you chemically alter your hair, you're changing those proteins, just like when you add heat to an egg, okay? And trust, once that happens, you're not going back to this egg, okay? Now, let's talk about signs of chemical reactions. And this is the most important part of this because you're going to need to know how to tell if a reaction has taken place. So the first thing, color change. I like Sammy. This is my boy Sammy. Sammy before, Sammy after. Now, here's the thing about Sammy. I don't care what Michael Jackson or Uncle Ruckus says. That is not reverse vitiligo. That, my friend, is what happens when you put bleach on your skin. All right? Next, formation of bubbles and gas. Now, here's the thing. Everybody knows about Mentos and Coke. This is great. This is wonderful. Here's the thing about that. They're outside. Here's why that's important. If you try this inside, then you got to meet this dude, which you don't want to do. So remember, Mentos and Coke outside, not inside, or you get ice cube in the sun. All right. Changes in odors. I know. The cow, yes. But again, that is also a chemical reaction. Yes, passing gas is a chemical reaction. Formation of particulates. Now, when I say particulates, some people get it confused with like rain. No. Here's what we're talking about. You ever had juice that's been in the refrigerator for a while and you kind of swirl it around and you see these things kind of floating in it, all right? Yeah, things have happened. You also find in chemistry that you can take two things that are clear, put them together, and you'll get stuff like this. That's a reaction. So this is something that happened when I added the two chemicals together. Changes in temperature, hot hands, and cold packs, both of which are caused by a chemical reaction. And then the last one for all of you Halloween fans, the glow stick. If you ever had a glow stick, until you go crack and open it up, it will not illuminate. But once you do that, it will glow until the reaction stops. Sometimes 6 hours, 8 hours later, your glow stick is still glowing in your room. Yes, so all in all, here's the take-home message. First of all, chemical reactions will change your reactant, what you started out with, to a product, something completely different. You can tell that a chemical reaction has occurred if one of these or multiple of these occur. And more important, not all reactions are chemical reactions. Some of them are just physical changes like melting melting ice and forming water, or boiling water and making steam. I hope this helps you out, and next time I'll actually show you some reactions where this is taking place. Thank you.
Today's gonna be a good day.
But things are a little bit different as we learn and work from home.
We got work to do.
We've got work to do. Ready for school.
Oh, it's time to go to school.
It's time to go to school.
Ready for school.
We can do this.
When KCPS strong. Even though it's a bit different, we're still learning, growing, and showing it.
Let's do this.
I'm not giving up.
We can do this! Keep showing it. Let's move forward.
Hey everyone, let's get started.
Let's do this.